Greg Knapp. This is the KCMO Morning Show. 576-7710 gets you on board the program. And I'm bringing back in John Bruner. He is running in the Republican primary this August to be the nominee to go up for the seat that is currently held by Senator Claire McCaskill in Missouri. John, how are you this morning?
I am doing fantastic. Couldn't be better.
Well, I appreciate you spending some time with us again. Got a ton of things to get to today. I want to start with the budget. We were just talking off the air about the problems with our spending and with our productivity in America. And President Obama now is the $5 trillion debt man. It is now over $5 trillion on his watch. It's unbelievable. Paul Ryan has a budget that will balance us eventually. I believe it's more than a decade out. Where do you come down on the Paul Ryan budget to start with? Do you agree with that one or not?
Well, the Paul Ryan budget is a step in the right direction. And you're right. Some people say it's going to take 28 years, some 29 years to balance the budget. I don't know whether we have that amount of time. And we need to look at this whole budget issue a heck of a lot stronger.
Would you vote for that Ryan budget if it came in front of you as a senator?
Well, as a senator, I'd go in and I'd look at the budget and I'd say, first of all, what can we do? Because I don't believe we have 28 years. So I'd try to find other opportunities in terms of what we need to do in terms of the budget. I'd want to be sure that our seniors are protected in some of those particular issues right there. But I do admire the work that they've done. The main thing is that they at least have a budget.
Right.
And the Senate now it's about
1,086 days.
80, I thought 80. You're 6 days more. I mean, this is ludicrous. In my family business here, we did budgets for 33 years. Budgets are plans. Budgets are setting priorities. Some things we got to postpone for a couple of years. If business is good, we can accelerate some.
Right. So you'd say you want to cut even quicker. Pat Toomey has put one forward in the Senate. He's a Republican out of Pennsylvania. His budget plan would balance in 8 years.
Right.
Would you be for something like that?
Well, now that to me is a lot more realistic. First of all, you have to take a scenario out there is how much time do we have on the clock? Some people have called this, we're on the edge of a financial Armageddon. I don't know whether it's that bad or not. We don't know. I mean, all of Europe is still up in the air. We are borrowing tons of money, $15 trillion. As you said, President Obama is the $5 billion guy, trillion guy. You know, and Claire McCaskill is with him 92% of the time. So how much time do we have and what can we do? But we got to pull both Republicans, Democrats, Independents together and make the tough decisions.
Have you looked at that Toomey budget yet to see if that would be something you could support?
Yeah, again, I think it's a step in the right direction. I have not drilled down, but I like the idea of 1% a year in terms of going after the aggressiveness of that program.
Yeah, he rolls back all the non-discretionary funding, the non-military and not Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. He rolls all that back to 2006 levels and freezes it there for 8 years. And that alone is just getting it back to 2006 and doing that for 8 years and then pegs it to inflation. And in those 8 years, you then come out into balance.
And from that standpoint, that'd be good. I would drill down in terms of looking at the tremendous number of baby boomers entering into retirement. Can you really freeze that aspect of the program and what the impact that's going to happen? And overall, it's the overall economy. You know, how robust growth you're going to have. Every budget depends upon increasing the revenues and business and growth in America. You know, I've got around the country here, and everybody's zeroing in on these costs. What can we cut? What can we cut? What can you cut? And for politicians and so many, that's all they understand. Well, at least some understand cuts. A lot of others only understand is spending. But I'm looking back, and I'll tell you a situation in our business years ago when I was working with my dad. We'd have those typical tough years. 3 out of 4 were tough years. And we'd be looking, what can we cut, what we can pull back in, and we scratch and determine what we can possibly do. And then my dad would say, well, John, you know, the answer is beyond these swinging doors. We got to go out and get some more sales. And when I was on the production line helping the folks on the line, they said, John, things are going good here. Go get us some orders. America needs sales. America needs orders.
Well, what's government's role in getting those orders? I mean, because, we've had government trying to do that. President Obama's doubling down on green energy. That's what's going to get us these green jobs. And it's an ultimate failure with the government picking winners and losers. So what do you do? What is the government's role on that?
Well, the government has a horrible record of picking winners and losers. And that's not free enterprise. America was great because of free enterprise. I've been across the state dozens of times. And what I have found out is what I've learned for over 30 years in manufacturing. Americans love to win. We love to produce. They love to add acreage to their farms. To uncreate a new piece of equipment to put in their factory. We love to win. We love to compete. What we have to do is get government off our backs. Number one issue are these job-killing regulations. People are hunkering down. It's the regulation of the day, regulation of the week. We just came through a program here last week. The The EPA, with the support of Claire McCaskill, has basically destroyed the coal industry. We cannot build more coal plants in America. Claire McCaskill says she hates coal. I mean, folks, that goes right into number 2 after regulations is have a great energy policy.
So you would work on trying to stop the EPA from doing that, stop President Obama from going around Congress. He couldn't get cap and trade done, couldn't even get the Democrats to vote for it. So he goes around it and gets the EPA to do it through regulation instead of legislation. You're saying you would get with senators and say, hey, let's rewrite this EPA law so they stop doing that?
Well, exactly right. And you're right on the cap and trade. Claire McCaskill came back. She was disappointed that cap and trade didn't get done. And she says, well, we'll get it done. And she's right. We get it done through the regulatory, through the executive branch, through telling these regulatory agencies, get in there and rewrite the rules. You know, building a coal plant takes years, tremendous capital. There's no way we can build any more coal plants in America.
You know, when you go back and look at the U.S. Constitution, the founders set up the U.S. Senate to protect the states and protect state sovereignty, right? It's the people's house that we elect, and they're our representatives. But then the Senate was supposed to protect the state sovereignty. And we see that, like you're talking about, with the EPA going after what can happen in the states. The thing they were trying to do with the farm laws of telling farmers that their kids couldn't work on the farm until they're 18 and handle some of this farm equipment that they've been doing for generations. What would you do as a senator from Missouri to stop the federal government from trampling on states' rights?
Well, you're exactly right. And when you get down to it, you know, the whole principle of our Constitution is to have government decentralized, back to the states, back to the local communities, whether it's our education, whether it's our manufacturing, you know, whether it's our agriculture, get the federal government out of the way. I mean, Claire McCaskill supported this EPA cross-state air pollution rule, which is basically, as we heard, the dust on the farms. Well, you're going to have dust on the farms. And what does she come in? She comes in and helps to get a temporary suspension. We don't need temporary suspensions of bad job-killing regulations. We need elimination of job-killing regulations. We need to have economic impact studies. We have environmental impact studies, economic impact studies. There are common sense regulations that make sense, and then there are those job-killing regulations. We could get America growing again without a problem if we just get big government to back off.
You know, I haven't had a chance to get into any kind of foreign policy with you yet, and I know your background's in business, but obviously as a U.S. Senator, you have to know a lot, and we have to get into foreign policy. We got the situation in Afghanistan. Over the last year or two, the reports say 70 of our military men have been killed by Afghan soldiers who are supposed to be our partners. We see this new Afghan Taliban surge that's going on. We've been there 10 years. Is it time to get out as quickly as we safely can, or continue on the Obama timeline, or stay until, quote, the job's done? Because I don't think people know what the job is anymore. Where do you stand on getting us out of there?
Well, I think you're exactly right. They don't know what the job is anymore, and we have failed leadership. I served as an infantry officer in the United States Marine Corps. I was in the Mediterranean, the North Atlantic, East Coast, West Coast. We're part of a ready reaction deployment force. I've never heard anybody put a time on a war. At such and such a time, we're going to end the war. I mean, number one, you have to have a 3-point issue. You got to understand, what are the risks? Number two, what are the resources that you need? And number three, what is the end game? What's the definition of victory? The term victory has never been used by this administration. Why would you send people into harm's way, and let's make it realistic, to death and maim and injury and so many lives and so many trillions of dollars lost without a definition of the end game other than a time clock and a calendar? You know, there's a story that's really heart-rending about this guy named Jeffrey White. He was at the Game 7 of the World Series last year. He's a specialist in the Army, and he told his mom and dad he wanted to be back for opening game here in this April. Well, he was killed April 3rd, you know, and on opening day, they had a memorial service where his parents raised the championship flag. This young man was hoping to be back to watch a Cardinals opening game. I read on the internet every week. I get this website, and I read the names and stories of all these young men and women that are killed in action. And I tell you, this is an immoral situation where we don't have a defined definition of victory. Well, we need to get the troops out.
And seeing all that, then what would your time... I mean, since he's already said this is the time and we know that we're not going to get what we want, then is it time to just get them out as quickly, as safely as we can?
It's exactly right. This is not worth the death of one more American. And I would suggest, who would volunteer to send their kid up to die right now? And we need to get out. Now, President Reagan understood the situation when it was in the Beirut bombing, and he understood this is not where we need to be, and he got the troops out. And he moved quickly and expeditiously.
What about North Korea? They just tried to launch this missile and it blew up on its own. Or did it? But it blew up on its own is what they told us. But there were people saying, you know what, this is a precursor to an ICBM that could deliver a nuclear warhead eventually to the United States. And there were some calling for us to shoot it down if it left North Korean airspace and got over Japanese airspace or South Korean airspace, that we should shoot it down. If you were in the Senate, would you support that, shooting down a test like that?
Well, going to war is a very, very serious issue, and you have to have very deliberate discussion and bring up the issues. And as a United States Senator, I would be asking the very, very tough questions. Again, going back to the point, what are the risks?
So that's a no or a maybe or?
Oh, no. First of all, if we're at risk, if our property or U.S. citizens were at risk, we should shoot that down. But if we're not at risk, then what are we going to do to...
well, I think they would say is that we're allies of South Korea and we're allies of Japan, so if it comes over their territory and they're at risk, for us to give them help in shooting it down.
Well, and of course, South Korea has those resources there, and we're there to help defend South Korea. And of course, if lives are at stake or property is at stake, as this issue was being discussed, I commented to one of our team members, I said, listen, this whole rocket thing could fail. This thing could be a disaster on its own. And of course, it turned out to be that way. So, but the real issue is we don't have a clear defined foreign policy. We don't have clear leadership. We don't have clear leadership in the President of the United States, and we don't have a leadership in the Senate. We need to get leaders back into Washington, D.C. We need to get citizens back engaged. We need a citizen senator. I'm proposing that I'm that person. I can take my Marine Corps experience, my military experience, 30 years of manufacturing experience, bring that to Washington, D.C., bring some sanity. If I could get on the Armed Services Committee, I'd ask the tough questions. And in terms of business and the economy, I know we can get America working again.
John Brunner, he is running to be your next senator out of Missouri. He is in the primary with Congressman Todd Akin and Sarah Steelman in August. Thanks so much for being with me today.